Councillor Bill. Do you want to speak? Yeah, I'm sure. Councillor John Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess the first comment I would make is that not being around in the first term of the council, the membership of various committees and groups at various times have struck me as being a little unusual, and one that has varied from stage to stage. I mean, I can remember just beginning even with the recommendations for the independent hearings panel, where we made recommendations as a council, and it was then the government who chose those people who made up that very important group, and in a number of notable instances were different from what we had recommended. So that seemed to me to be a rather unusual situation where the council, whose plan it is, who makes a recommendation and then the government changes it before we've even started. That continued, and I'm not casting, I want to make it very clear, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone in this, it's just the way it's unravelled. We had the Unitary Plan Committee, which considered the council submissions, and on that committee there was only eight councillors, until one was, I think, Councillor Penrose was added at a later point, and the two IMSB members. So on that very important committee, there was, under 50% membership of actual elected councillors. IMSB made up, 25% of the membership of that in that respect. So along the way, where people as elected or unelected members have fitted into this has changed. It's been different at whatever particular stage the process has been in. I guess I'm more concerned about the practicalities of a two-tier system here, given we've got a very compressed time scale. We know that, very compressed. I mean, in my view, ridiculously compressed for such an important matter. And without second guessing how the unitary plan will be debated, but you can be reasonably sure I think there's going to be a number of issues where the debate is fairly intense, and conceivably that decision will be made in a close vote. And if that is the case, then ultimately that would have to result in relitigation of a decision in a two-tier process, because two votes can decide things. So I don't know how that's going to pan out, but that seems to me, in the circumstances we're in terms of time, is not all that practical. What I also don't really like, certainly in terms of public perception, and conflict of interest is one example of public perception, a very important consideration in terms of non-pecuniary interests. In terms of public perception, doesn't that give rise to the belief that and somehow the governing body is just a rubber stamp then? The decision is made by the Auckland Development Committee, and then it is decided upon just soon after by the governing body. I would say in terms of perception, and we have talked about perception, that's not a good signal to be giving out to the public. Mr Mayor, you made the very good point, I thought, that everyone wants a job done, I think you said. Everyone wants this finished off. The government's made that very clear with their kind of bully boy statements, which, if we're talking about conduct, I don't find to be particularly appropriate to a process like that. The opposition, they've jumped on their coattails just the same. Everybody wants a piece of the action, and so forth and so on, to the various interest groups who have a very narrow focus in terms of unitary plan decision making. The people who we represent, that's the public. They have a very clear understanding that it will be us who are making this decision, the governing body. We are the people, in a very short space of time, I would suggest, are going to be publicly accountable for this decision and other decisions we've made. Unelected people don't have that accountability. Their view can be a little different in that respect. So I would suggest to you, and I think our paper makes that clear, that we have the ability to determine whether it's one stage or two stage. I would suggest, in terms of the scale of this decision, which everyone recognises is a very significant one, that it should be the governing body, both in terms of practicalities of the time that's available and also in terms of ultimate responsibility. It's our responsibility, and I don't think that should be undercut in any way in terms of a perception that the governing body is somehow a rubber stamp. Mr Mayor, in light of all that, I'll be supporting the one-tier process. I wasn't involved in the Unitary Plan Committee, as indeed were other councillors, weren't involved also, so this is just part and parcel of a process where membership has changed, and now we're at the last stage, and at the last stage it's a governing body. Thank you.
Right. Got Councillor Wayne.
Sure. I'll just follow on from those comments. It's very, very clear that the body that has the responsibility, the authority and the accountability for the decision is the governing body. And one of the basic principles around decision making is you try and match those things, responsibility, authority and accountability, as much as you can. Now, this two-tier process just doesn't cut it. You don't send 17 people onto the field when the team's meant to be 15. You just don't do it. And the team that is making this decision is the mayor, and the mayor and the chair, and the governing body. And we're all accountable. We shouldn't have people around the table making decisions that are not accountable. That is not fair. And if ever there was an issue that goes to fairness, that goes to public confidence, that goes to perception, it's this.
Right. Councillor Alf.
Thank you, Your Worship. The question for me after hearing the debate is why is it important for the Independent Māori Statutory Board to be part of the process? There's a few reasons why they should be part of the process. Your Worship, one of them is legislation. They were put there under legislation to be part of this Auckland Council and make us accountable in regards to the Treaty of Waitangi. And everybody's got their agenda, and item 22 on the agenda explains that well. Also, Your Worship, the other reasons is that when the committees were set up by yourself, Your Worship, we all knew that the delegation for the unitary plan was going to always fall with the Auckland Development Committee, and then it was going to go to the governing body for the final decision to be made. So I don't know where the other councillors have been since the start of this term. Your Worship, the board has been part of the design of the plan. They've been right from the outset, and the board, I think there's a comment, and Catherine, you might be able to help us with this, but I think the Auckland Council Act that the board will assist and advise council on the design and execution of policies and plans. As I said previously, Your Worship, the Auckland Development Committee was the committee that was set up in this term to hear the Unitary Plan Committee, and the Independent Māori Statutory Board, not only that particular committee, but many committees that they are on, have been participating in this whole process, not only the Unitary Plan, but processes and policies within the Auckland Council Committee structure. And on many occasions, they have been the people that have been there that ended up ensuring the committees continued because of the lack of quorum from some of the councillors, the elected members around here that couldn't make the committees for want of a better term. For want of a better reason, they couldn't get here. They have been here right from the outset, and I mean for us now to end up saying that they're not going to be part of this process is wrong. Two treaty audits, Your Worship, that came through from a very not only reliable but credible professional organisation, basically outlined for us anyway that we failed to understand its legislative obligations to Māori. So for us, the biggest document everybody's been talking around has been a unitary plan. Well, Your Worship, on the 25th of October 2013, you announced the committees and the chairs, so it was with some surprise that I found out that I was chairing the Unitary Plan Committee on that particular day. But like everybody that ends up getting, whether it be the chair or members of any of our committees, you only take it and you deal with it. So the members on the Unitary Plan Committee, I want to say thank you to the members and also to some of the councillors that ended up attending some of the Unitary Plan Committees, because the first meeting for us was on the 25th of February 2014, and I've led that process since then, along with the Deputy Mayor. And Your Worship, it'll be interesting if anybody wanted to go under the Official Information Act to see how many other councillors who were not on that committee attended the Unitary Plan Committee. If I'm hearing them say that is the biggest document in the whole of New Zealand and for Auckland Council, well then let's see who actually attended the Unitary Plan Committee. And everybody knows that you can attend any of the committees even though you are not members of it. So I don't know whether anybody's going to ask for any information under the Official Information Act to see who actually attended the Unitary Plan Committee. I think they will be very interested to find out who didn't and who are now advocating for the one-step process. The two-step process is the process that needs to continue from here onwards. And Your Worship, people have already said it here, the two-step process, because the Independent Māori Statutory Board have been there right from the start. They have been there right from the start. We all took the oath that we will end up at least adhering to legislations of New Zealand. Well, they have been legislated to be part of the Auckland Council, whether we like it or not. So I will be supporting the two-tier process and will not be supporting anything otherwise. Thank you, Your Worship.
Very good. Councillor Penny W.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I mean, I would have to say Councillor Fletcher has been very consistent in her criticism of the process over many years, in fact stating that she wouldn't be supporting any of the unitary plan. But the IMSB had a huge impact on working in the unitary plan and before it went to the independent hearing panel.
Point of order, Mr
And
Chairman, a suggestion has been made by the Speaker that I would not support any of the unitary plan. That is not the case. There have been issues, particularly around process and contestable policy advice, that have been of concern to me, but I have never said that I would not support any of the unitary plan. I'm looking forward to the adoption of the IHP's recommendations. So I would just ask that member to withdraw that comment.
Sorry, I must have heard differently, but never mind.
Yep, okay.
So
the
anyway,
apology is given. Thank you.
I think the IMSB has made a huge impact on this unitary plan before it went to the independent hearing panel. As Councillor Alf said, the government made it perfectly clear when they set up Auckland that Independent Maori Statutory Board represents a huge amount of our citizens and needed to be there, and they have contributed hugely. And I would just point out, because I think Councillor Cashmore made some very clear points I wanted to, the next biggest job this council does, as far as the unitary plan is concerned, is the long-term plan, the budget that pays for everything that we need to do. And that is actually put through a vigorous process at the Finance and Performance or Finance and Strategy, whatever it's called at the time, committee. And then it goes to the governing body for sign-off. And there's no difference to this process as to that process.